In 1315, the Great Famine of Europe struck northern Europe, primarily in the British Isles, northern France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Scandinavia, Germany, and western Poland. It was the first of a series of large-scale crises that struck Europe early in the 14th century.
So hot in here, so hot in.
During the medieval warm period, Europe experienced temperatures far warmer than average. This period lasted for about 300 years. Due to the warmer temperatures, crop yields were fantastic and civilization flourished. Lands that were once uninhabitable because they were covered in ice were now fit for civilization. The population grew rapidly because of the abundance of food, increased land availability, and beautiful weather. Around 1300, the beautiful climate took a turn for the worse. Temperatures dropped far below average and shocked the European society. The Little Ice Age was characterized by harsh winters and cold, rainy summers. The drastic change in temperatures rendered the land unsuitable for crop growing. Food could not be provided to keep livestock alive, and fish swam south to find warmer waters. The warm period's population boom matched with the Little Ice Age's crop yield bust was a disastrous combination. This led to the Great Famine of 1315.
The Great Famine of Europe, beginning in 1315, brought about a number of different consequences. It was a period marked by extreme levels of crime, disease, and mass death. Life expectancy dropped, and diseased plants led to illness. The combination of flooding and freezing winters resulted in 3 back-to-back harvest failures. These harvest failures drove prices up, which resulted in widespread starvation. This price inflation had effects on the economy and quickly drove people to do inhumane things, such as practice cannibalism. Changes in authority within the church also affected the European society as a whole. Many of the elderly voluntarily starved themselves to death so that the younger members of the family might live to work the fields again.
My son, you must eat the food.
But Mom, you'll die.
No, my son, you're younger and stronger.
Well, shit. She's dead.
During the Great Famine, life expectancy went down, so in an attempt to save their own lives, royal leaders were first concerned with providing enough food for themselves and their families. They then would attempt to regulate the prices of basic food items such as grain and certain meats in order to mitigate their subjects' misery and keep control of their government and people. However, farmers were not happy with these price controls and often refused to sell their products for artificially low prices, which then led to increased shortages.
No food for the peasants.
For example, in the Kingdom of England, King Edward proclaimed that the people of the realm should limit the number of courses served at their tables due to him believing that they were eating excessive and abundant portions of food. He also attempted to regulate the prices of food in his kingdom, but would ironically lift these regulations within a year due to cities declaring that they were resorting to eating their horses and pets, and even one city rumored to be resorting to cannibalism.
Many solutions, both positive and negative, contributed to the downfall of the Great Famine of Europe. One imperative discovery was the different methods of food preservation. Preservation methods included sun-drying, salting, and smoking. These techniques allowed meats, fruits, and vegetables to stay fresh for longer periods and assisted many Europeans in their fight against the famine. Another solution, and one not as ideal, was a disaster far worse than the Great Famine itself, the Black Death. This plague destroyed Europe's opportunity to return to normalcy in 1347, but had a few positive advantages. The survivors of the Black Death contributed to the regeneration of pre-famine life. After Europe's population decreased, survivors were finding that they were now flourishing with an excess amount of food, and European society shifted to a higher standard of living. This standard would eventually lead to a more even wealth distribution and the recovery of the economy after 1450.
The picture shown is one of the most iconic artworks symbolizing the Great Plague of Europe. In the picture, Death sits astride a lion whose long tail ends in a ball of flame, which represents hell. Famine, who is the woman standing in hell, points to her hungry mouth to represent the famine itself.
In conclusion, the famine is called the Great Famine not only because of the number of people who died, or the vast geographic area that was affected, or the length of time it lasted, but also because of the lasting consequences which affected the agriculture, population, the church, the state, and society as a whole. The economy suffered immensely, life expectancy dropped, governmental corruption was proved, and society in general took a turn for the worse. After this hugely devastating disaster, Europe barely had time to recover when they were bombarded with another catastrophe, the Black Plague. The mix of the Great Famine and the Black Plague left the continent scarred for years and years. While both of these disasters are considered natural disasters, they were simply exacerbated by flawed leadership over the whole continent.